Yeah, correct. Okay, there we go. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. Guten Abend. Good evening. I'm going to give people a moment to join. I'm going to share it on 2 more Facebook pages. One day, if you want to volunteer to be full-time tech support for the rabbi, we are available. Actually, it's not going to let me log in, so I'm going to. Oh, am I logged in already? No. Okay, I'll share it on the other Facebook pages later. We are good on Zoom. Let me let Mitchell in. And we are going to turn on the camera. Okay, peoples of the world. It is Wednesday night, and we will not have class for the next 2 Wednesdays. The first week from tonight is the Seder. Following Wednesday night is Achron Shel Pesach, the last night of Pesach, going into Thursday, which is going to be the last day of Pesach. I believe it's April 9th. So next Wednesday, April 1st, and the following Wednesday, April 8th, there will not be class. If you'd like to hear me speak and share Torah wisdom, you are welcome to come to Bozeman, Montana. And we will have many meals and many celebrations and many good times to talk about Yom Tov. What I'm going to do tonight, which I try to do every year before Pesach, is to discuss Pesach. It makes sense. It's a week before. Generally, it says in the Code of Jewish Law, Shloishim Yom Koydem Achag, 30 days before any Jewish holiday, any Jewish biblical holiday, you're supposed to prep yourself with knowledge, with inspiration, with practicality. We are a lot less than 30 days away from Pesach, but it's better late than never, and we got to get into the mode. We spoke about that a few weeks ago, getting into that mode of Pesach and not just looking for collective liberation or commemorating something that happened 3,300 years ago, but what does that mean to us today in 2026, especially in a world that seems to be never-ending, full of never-ending chaos? This morning, I was learning a discourse from the Rebbe from 1960. Actually, December. It was probably December of 1959. And I'm not going to share with you the content of the whole discourse because it's not a discourse that's connected to the time of the year of Pesach, but everything's connected. And so the Rebbe in this discourse quotes an incredible medrash in the Medrash Tehillim. Medrash Tehillim says on Psalm 90. What is Psalm 90? Kapitel Tzadik, Perek Tzadik, Psalm 90 in the book of Psalms. It says, Tfilah Moshe, prayer by Moses. Isha Lakim, the man of God. And then it goes on when Moshe is talking to Hashem about various different things. And for those that don't know, someone mentioned to me, actually, they just found out about it, and I smiled because if you go to yeshiva, you know that the book of Psalms was not written solely by King David. Was it you that I was talking? Yeah, you were talking about, Robert. There was a guy named Asaph. There's Moses. There's some Psalms that date back to Adam. So there's 10 officially. King David was the majority author, but it's a compilation that includes prayers from various people, 10 primary sources in Judaism. Psalm 90 is from King of Moshe. And the Medrash says in Medrash Tehillim that Moshe's prayer was unique more than anyone else's prayer. And the Medrash is trying to assess as to why. And the Medrash says as follows. Imagine if a king makes himself available to the masses and he comes to you and says, hey, Robert, anything you want. And Robert says, Your Honor, however you refer to a king, I've never hung out with a king. Your Majesty, very good. I know we have big rallies, no kings, but that's why there's no kings. So Your Majesty, Your Majesty, your Royal Highness, what I would like is I have a record in the kingdom of having murdered someone. So I'd like for you to expunge my record and set me free. King says, sure. Another guy comes and says, I have a record. What do you want? The king says, I have a record with X, Y, and Z. I want you to expunge it. No problem. Verdict. Innocent. Go. Goodbye. Third one shows up and says, Your Majesty, you know what I want? There's a village in the king's territory where the king is king that is totally, it's falling apart. It's like a ghost town of sorts. I want your permission and I want you to give me your blessing and finances to rebuild that city for your honor. That's a whole different prayer. That's a whole different request. Says the Medrash Tehillim, King David stood in front of God and said to God, he had an open door with God, and he says to God, Hashem, Shima Tfilasi, God, listen to my prayers. I'm suffering. I need your help. Okay, God will help him. Chavakuk, the great prophet, I think they call him Habakkuk. What a weird name they gave him. His name was Chavakuk. Chavakuk had a whole conversation with God where he touched on some lines that he wasn't supposed to. He said to God, I find it odd that Nebuchadnezzar, who's a wicked person, ends up having power, but righteous people like Daniel, the leader of the Jewish people, doesn't have power. Achashverosh, the wicked king, has power, and he has to be the one to appoint Mordechai. Why should Mordechai have to be appointed in the story of Esther, in the story of Purim, by some Gentile idolater crackpot who killed his own wife? Why should the impure have more power than the pure? Habakkuk went on to say that Pharaoh, this uncircumcised and impure person, should have power over the Jews. Basically, in this conversation, Habakkuk, the prophet, was sharing some pretty damaging issues that he was struggling with in his relationship with God. Then God says, then the third one showed up. That was Moses. He didn't ask me for anything about himself. He didn't ask me about his reputation. He didn't ask me to deal with his issues. He didn't question things. You know what he did? He prayed for the Jewish people. He said, Slach na l'avoin hazeh, please forgive the sin of the people after the sin of the golden calf. That is prayer. That is unique. That is oneness with God when it's not about you. It's about showing up for God and saying, oh God, you have a people or you have a village that needs rectification because it's messed up. I want to be the person. Allow me the pleasure and honor to service you, your majesty, by doing what you need and should have done for your nation, for your kingdom. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. That was Moses. And we talk about Passover, we get so caught up in the cooking and the schlepping and the cleaning and the technicalities that sometimes we forget what it's all about. And of course, as I mentioned, it's about personal redemption. Americans as a whole, I can't speak for other nations, but as someone who's lived in America my entire life, America as a whole is pretty bogged down in a state of bondage. People are not free. They could say 1,000 times we are the freest nation on the earth, and that might be true. We are, as a nation, we are free to do whatever stupid things we want to do. We're free. But individual freedom? You tell an American that they can't have Wi-Fi. You tell an American they have to live in a house with one toilet. You tell an American that they can't afford 3 vacations a year. You tell an American that they can't have 16 federal holidays of which nobody knows why we're celebrating it, but somehow we need 4 days off from work and school. Why can't the bank teller take a check from me? Oh, it's because of Martin Luther King. So I assume when they're off from work, they're studying Black history and they're experts on Martin Luther King or George Washington's birthday or Labor Day. Let's celebrate work by not working. I mean, it's phenomenal. Right? Let's celebrate work by not working. It should be my bumper sticker. Thank you. Happy Labor Day. Celebrating not working. And so we need to be able to have personal liberation. With that in mind, I decided tonight I'm going to do something I've never done before. I have this Haggadah. It's my father's Haggadah from when he was a yeshiva student, so it has his name in it when he was learning in 770, and that was in the early 1970s. So when he moved to Israel, he left it here in Bozeman. And this is called the Rebbe's Haggadah. Why is it called the Rebbe's Haggadah? There's only one Haggadah. I mean, there's one. We all read the Haggadah on Passover. In 1946, the first book that the Rebbe, the first of many that the Rebbe authored, was a compilation of commentary on the Haggadah of Passover. So 4 years before his father-in-law passed away in 1950, the Rebbe wrote notes. And what it looks like is like this, just to show you the actual image. So you have the top page of the Haggadah, where you have with the vowels, the words, and at the bottom, on various sections, the Rebbe wrote commentary. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go through the Rebbe's Haggadah with about 10 or 12 interesting insights on the Haggadah, which will allow us to come into the Seder, to come into Pesach a little better off than we usually do. First of all, it's interesting. There's a very, very interesting comment that the Rebbe addresses, and that is, should converts to Judaism celebrate Passover? Why are you celebrating altogether? You weren't there. Your ancestors were never enslaved. For all we know, your ancestors were the ones that enslaved us. So why would you celebrate the Exodus? And actually, what the Rebbe goes on to explain is that you can ask the same question about the Levites and the Kohanim. In Egypt, the Levites lived in their own town of Goshen. We read that in the book of Genesis. The Levites were not primarily enslaved like the rest of the Jewish people, and yet every Levite celebrates Passover. Because it's not about just those people who have a direct descendants that were in Egypt. It's about any person who's Jewish celebrating the collective reality of redemption that came to our people, and the idea that the Exodus from Egypt was a time when redemption became a possibility altogether. There was no such thing in creation at that point where people have the ability to be redeemed, both internally and externally. And from then, all the other redemption and all the other freedom fighters and all the other times where people became a free nation was all founded on the original freedom experience which took place at the Exodus from Egypt. So of course converts are included because they are Jewish, and not only are they connected to the Jews that were redeemed from Egypt, but it's part of their personal process as well. They are seeking to redeem their inner essence, their godly soul, out of the bondage of being in a non-Jewish body. Their soul is yearning to express its inner self. That's a freedom mechanism. And therefore, not only could they celebrate Passover, but if anything, they even have more to say about the individual freedom, because that's exactly this spiritual liberation that they are looking for. So that's just an intro in general to, again, from the Rebbe's commentary on the Haggadah. I will say that the previous, the Rebbe Rashab, Rebbe Shalom Dov Ber, who passed away in 1920, he told his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he said these words: Yosef Yitzchak, which is what his name was, medarf trachten, that during the Seder you have to think, as sein a mensch wird der Eibishter helfen. You have to think about being a mensch, being a decent human being, a God-fearing person, and God will help you get there. Befrat be'ez psichas adels, especially when we open the door for Shloich HaMascha with the candles. Nish beten kin gashmis bet ruchnis. Don't ask for physical and material stuff. Ask for spirituality. People complain so often that they're struggling spiritually. Okay. Did you ever ask God to intervene? Only when you don't have a mortgage payment, you turn to God. What is he, your banker? God, I don't know how I'm going to pay the mortgage tomorrow. How about God? I don't know how I'm going to daven tomorrow. It's not working. I'm trying. So when we open up the door for Elijah the prophet during the Seder, it's an opportune time, a very powerful, auspicious, godly time, that we shouldn't just stand there and say, send us blessings, send us Elijah, but we're asking God to intervene in our spiritual pursuits, that they have the ability to be successful. And so there's no shame in that. I don't know why people think it's makes more sense to need physical and material stuff than spiritual stuff. Spirituality is tough. To remain a spiritual being in this crazy world, it's not easy. The world is not exactly offering spirituality hanging off the trees. You have to work hard to maintain it. You have to work to attain it, and then to retain it, it's even harder. And that's what we ask for during the Seder. Now, one of the first things we do at the Seder is we put the 3 matzahs. Why 3 matzahs? You don't need 3 matzahs. You don't have to eat 3 matzahs the night of the Seder. You have to eat like 2. Whatever the exact measurements are, 2 round ones I'm talking about.
Symbolic.
What, 3 symbolic for what?
Well, 1 for eating, the other 2 items.
What's
1 symbolic for eating and breaking and eating.
I'm saying, but why 3?
Yeah, I don't know the other 2.
So the Rebbe writes here in his notes 2 explanations. He says that in Kirwan, which I believe was somewhere in the Middle East, in the Middle East, Reb Shrira Goin, one of the Gaonim, after the Talmudic era, there was the Gaonim era. So we're talking about 1,400 years ago, 1,500 years ago. One of the great, there was Reb Hai Goin, there was Reb Sadia Goin, and there was Reb Shrira Goin. So his students asked him, why do we have 3 matzahs? And he said, first of all, why can't you have 4? Why don't I have 4 matzahs? What if I like matzah? Can I stick? No, you have to have specifically 3 on the Seder plate. Why? So he said that when Abraham and Sarah were hosting the angels in their house in the book of Genesis, the angels that looked like people, they what? There were 3 angels, but it says she took she took 3 measurements, 3 sa'as, and she made them matzah because it was Passover. So to commemorate the hospitality and how she prepared for the angels, we begin our Seder. In other words, we're literally starting our Seder. The first thing, before we even open our mouths, we didn't even say the words yet of the 15 steps of the Seder. First thing we're doing is reminding ourselves where we come from and what they represented. And what did Abraham and Sarah represent? Kindness and hospitality. So the 3 matzahs to commemorate that. And that's just an important thing in a world where, I saw this week with this TSA, we gave food, and we're doing, actually, it's interesting. I just got a text message from someone here in the community that said, "Can we do it next week?" It's a true story. They didn't sponsor. Someone else sponsored last week. It wasn't, and they texted and said, "We saw what you did. It doesn't look like they're solving the issue in DC. So if you want, so before Pesach, hopefully I'm going to do a round 2. I can't bring chametz on Pesach, but I'm definitely not giving them matzah. I don't want them to hate Jews. I don't want to create 50 more anti-Semites. I'll give them grape juice and matzah and say Happy Passover, and that'll be the end of it. Forget about government. I'll be their worst enemy." But think about that. The Jewish people begin their most important night of the year, the most important commemorative night of the year, by doing what? Taking 3 matzahs to remember that our ancestors were hospitable to random people showing up in town. Now, there's a second thing the Rebbe says. There are those that say it's connected to the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but that's secondary. The first answer the Rebbe says, the first explanation, is specifically about kindness that's related to Abraham and Sarah, the founding father and mother of the Jewish people. Then we go into the 15 steps of the Seder. Then we go Kiddush, we make Kiddush. And we have, throughout the Seder, we drink 4 cups of wine to commemorate the 4 words that are used in the Torah regarding redemption. Then we wash our hands to eat a raw vegetable, a potato, or an onion, depending on your specific tradition. And then we welcome poor people. We have this beautiful Aramaic prayer, Hey Lach Ma'anya. This is the bread that our fathers ate in Egypt. Whoever is hungry should come and eat. Whoever is needy should come and do the Pesach offering with us. This year, we are here. Next year, in the land of Israel. This year, we are slaves. Next year, we'll be free. So the Rebbe has a very beautiful explanation on this, which I only saw this year for the first time. The entire prayer of welcoming the guests that are poor is written in Aramaic, not in Hebrew, except for the last words. Next year, b'nei chayrim, we should be people that are free. All the other words are Aramaic. Hey, lachma, anya, it's all Aramaic, except for those last words. So the Rebbe says, why would you make, in the middle of a Pesach Seder, why would you make a prayer in Aramaic? So he said, especially because if you look at the rest of the Haggadah, it's in Hebrew. Well, why is this? Before we even say the Manashtana, we're saying a prayer in Aramaic. So the Rebbe says that it was specifically written in Aramaic because that was the language that everyone spoke when it was offered, and we wanted to make sure you could say all the holy stuff in Hebrew, but when it comes to welcoming the poor, you need the poor people to understand that you're talking to them, to make it real. So what's the question, if that's the case? Why is the last words in Hebrew? If the whole goal is to say it in Aramaic, just so that people should know that they're welcome, why would you end the last words next year and that next year will be free in Hebrew? Come on, where's the Yiddish cup?
I don't think so.
Hmm?
I don't think so. Because
Right, but if they're saying, why can't they pray out loud? And if everything's in Aramaic, why not say in Aramaic? Next year we'll be free. They didn't want their neighbors. They didn't want the non-Jews that were enslaving them in Babylon or wherever it was to think that they're trying to get out. So welcoming guests, that was all done in Aramaic. Yeah, my neighbors can know that I'm welcoming guests. But to say that next year I want to be free, you didn't want to say that in Aramaic because then they'll understand. And if they understand, they'll get very upset. So they specifically said that in Hebrew. So hopefully those neighbors should not understand and they should just think that they were mumbling something in Hebrew without getting to it. But when it comes to welcoming guests, you can't welcome guests, haphazardly, you have to make sure they really understand that you mean it and you genuinely would like them to come. And that it's interesting that when the kids, right after that, we go into the 4 questions. What makes the Seder to say the 4 questions? Keep the kids asking questions. What's up with the questions? The answer is we need the father to tell them the story of Passover. How do you answer if you don't have questions, you have no answers to the question. You're not storytelling. But if you have questions, and we do a lot of things during the Seder to make sure they ask, and then we give them the answer. And the answer is the story of our enslavement and our freedom. And again, over here we have the same issue that I mentioned earlier, where you tell your kid, Avodim ayinu l'fayir b'Mitzrayim. My ancestors were slaves, but what if I'm a Levite? What if I'm a Kohen? What if I'm a convert? Same answer. right? Actually, in the Haggadah, we read about Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua and all these rabbis. And the reason he met, because one of them was a Levi, and one of them was a Kohen, and one of them was a grandson of a convert, Rabbi Akiva. We want to read it to know that they too celebrated Pesach, because redemption and inner redemption and the collective redemption of our people is also connected to them. Then it goes on, we start saying the story in the Haggadah. Then we get to the four sons. Today I read an incredible letter from the Rebbe. It's not in the Haggadah. This is a letter the Rebbe wrote in 1957, 4 days before Pesach. A long 4-page letter in Yiddish. I was learning it with one of my partners that I study with on Zoom. And the Rebbe says the Rebbe said this in 1957, which means today in 2026, it means so much more. That there's four sons we talk about: the wise, the wicked, the simpleton, and the one who doesn't know to ask questions. But the common denominator between all of them is that they're all sitting at the Seder table. Even the wicked one, who may be an antagonizer and a nudnik, but he's sitting next to the wise one, the spiritual one, he's at the table, he's with the program, he's not embarrassed to hang out, he knows that he belongs there, even though if he fetches and argues about everything. But there's a generational issue with the Jew who doesn't even know that he belongs at a Seder. They're not even mentioned that God because they're not at the Seder table, and it's our job to bring them close, to make sure that that Jew, who's maybe fifth generation has been disconnected, should know that the Seder is a place for them. That's why even when it comes to the wicked son, we say if he was there, he'd never be redeemed. Now, what kind of inspiration is that? We're telling a wicked guy, hey, by the way, you're such a putz. If you were there in Egypt, we would have never redeemed you. That's how you're going to inspire him? Imagine if that was you. He wants you to know, I think you belong to be enslaved. And had you been there, you wouldn't get free. You wouldn't be free. But the Rebbe says it's not what it's saying here. If you look at the words of the Haggadah, again, this is from the Rebbe's teaching. He says that you tell him, in Hebrew it says, Ilu hayasham, if you would have been there, you would have not been redeemed. That's really an inspirational message, because what it's saying is, if you were in Egypt, you would not be redeemed. But in this redemption, when Mashiach comes, everyone's going to be redeemed. No matter how bad you are, Hashem says that no Jew is going to be left behind, that every single Jew will be redeemed. So therefore, it actually isn't a very inspirational thing to tell them, because you won't be left out when Mashiach comes. Redemption will find its way to your door as well. Then we continue reading through the Haggadah and the hardship and the enslavement and the negativity the Jewish people experienced. And then we make our way to, we go through the 10 plagues, which is another interesting discussion in itself, whether it was 10 that equaled 40 or equaled 50, which at the sea meant it equaled 200 and 250. How many plagues did God do to the Jewish people? We also take wine out of our cup at that moment. We don't want to celebrate with wine the suffering of other people, and even if they deserve it, it's not where we want to go with it. And we eventually come to the incredible prayers of the Dayenus. Everyone knows Dayenu, Dayen. But there's such depth in the Dayenu song. Most Americans know how to scream Dayenu. They don't know any of the other words. I remember when we first moved to Bozeman. I used to go, Ilu, Ilu, Etzionu, Etzionu. And those words everyone knows. Etzionu, Mitzrayim. I'm like, no. There's Ve'elaya, Saba, Hemshvat. Like, there's other words you got to read. It's not just the stanza. But what it says is that if God didn't do this, there's 15 of them, right? If God didn't do this, but it would have been enough. If God would have only done that. But one of them is, he says, if he would have split the sea, if God would have split the sea for us, the Yam Suf, and he would have not allowed us to pass through it in dry land. What do you mean? What's the other option? He would have taken us through the sea, but not let it be dry land? What does that look like? How could it be split and not dry? You following? What's the third option?
So the paths.
Okay, so he says, if God would have split the sea and not allow us to go through it on dry land, how's that possible? How could he have split the sea and not go through it on dry land? Right? How many years do people sing the song and they never pay attention? Says the Rebbe that first of all he says that they could have walked through the sea, but the seabed could have been muddy, not dry. It wouldn't be water, you wouldn't drown, but it could have been muddy. It could have been like some kind of trudging through concrete, wet concrete. But God didn't do that. He did a secondary miracle to make sure that the entire seabed where the Jews were walking, all 12 paths, were dry, that you're walking like you're walking on a sidewalk. So he could have split the sea and not made us go through it on dry land, meaning what? We would have had to walk through the mud. And so we're expressing another layer of gratitude. Also, why did God have to split the sea altogether? Could have.
We just ended up on the same spot.
Right, he said he would have given us the Egyptians money and not split the sea. How would we get their money if there wouldn't be the split sea? Didn't we collect all the gold and silver at the beach, at the shore when it says, yeah, he could have had the Egyptians drop dead a different way, and then we just collected without having to go through. But the best one is where it says he could have taken us to Sinai and not given us the Torah. Now ask yourself, what in the world would that be? We say, Ilu Kervanu of Ner Sinai would have brought us close to Sinai, and you would have not given us a Torah. Now, what would be the point of being at Sinai and not having a Torah? Wasn't the whole point of Sinai that we got a Torah? So the Rebbe says about that as well. First of all, the revelation at Sinai was an incredible godly revelation. The world has never seen a revelation like that from God anywhere, anytime. So let's say God would have taken us to Sinai and never given us the Torah. He would just allow his revelation to take place and decide, you know what? No Torah, just the revelation. We'd be happy. Actually, it sounds like a win-win. You get a revelation from God without 613 commandments. I don't know. It sounds good to me. No, it doesn't sound good. No, I've never tried the other option. I'm saying that seriously. I've never not been living an observant Jewish lifestyle. So I can't testify to it. So I'll trust those who have lived a non-religious lifestyle and chosen a religious life to recognize that it's better off with the Torah. But the other thing the Rebbe says is that imagine if we would have come to Sinai and heard the 10 commandments, but he wouldn't give us the actual full 613 commandments, just the 10. We have a revelation at Sinai with 10 commandments, but we're so grateful. We're dancing with joy. We're saying Dayenu because we are grateful that he gave us so much more. He didn't just say, okay, you got that, you're good. So to Ada's point, Jews kvetch about how many commandments there are, right? Let's say in Garrett's case, you rent a new apartment. You need mezuzahs. You need to immerse your new vessels into a mikveh, right? To make sure that the ones that need to go to a mikveh, go to a mikveh. You need to make sure you have a kosher kitchen. If you're married, you have to make sure you have the proper bedding. I mean, you have to have, there's laws, and the laws of family purity of how many beds you need in a bedroom. You have to have a house with Jewish books. You have to make sure you have your tefillin with you. You have to make sure if you have a rooftop that you're making sure the roof is protected. It's another biblical command. By the time you're done, you think the insurance company is the problem. You got 500 things you need to do before. So some people say, oh, it's such a burden. Others that are smart, like Ada, will say, no. When we sing Dayenu, we say, if you would have taken us to Sinai and not given us the Torah, we would have been happy. But of course, we're happy that you gave us the Torah. Not because it's a burden, but because it's the greatest blessing in the world that we have guidance for every aspect of our life. Go speak to anyone in society that has no guidance, the free-for-all, which most of them now from their mother's basements, they run podcasts. They have no structure in their life. It's all about making a few extra dollars. So if they get a lot of people to listen to them, they get money from the companies. So they babble all day with nothingness. Not married, not successful, just babbling. They have no structure. You have structure, you have function, you have a reason to live, you have a reason to be productive, and Hashem gives you the exact guidance how to do it. And of course, we are super grateful for that. Then we go on, we say the matzah, we say the maror. Then we do the special blessing with a cup of wine, where we actually make a blessing on redemption. Then we eat the matzah, which is everyone's favorite part, then the maror. Then we eat the sandwich, and the afikoyman, then we have to eat the next, Then we do the benching, the grace after meals. We try, of course, the first night we try to eat the we eat the matzah, the afikoyim before midnight. I don't know when midnight is in Montana these days. Not 12 midnight, the halachic midnight. So now the night starts around what, 8 o'clock now, 8:30? When does it get dark? When does Shabbos end? I wasn't here this past weekend.
So around 2.
8:20. So I'm guessing it's 12:30 or something at this point. As it gets later, it's going to get later. But whenever midnight is, the first night you make sure to eat it the afikoyim before, because that was the way it was done in biblical days. And then we read this bunch of prayer songs before the end of the Seder. We read the famous Nishmas prayer that we say in Shul every Shabbos, which is one of the most prolific, beautiful prayers in Judaism. We say it right before Yishtabach. Yishmas kol chai, we sing it at one of the last things at the Seder. That prayer was actually, according to the Gemara, according to the Talmud and the Tractate of Pesachim, that was instituted by the great Tanaik, the great Mishnaic sage, Shimon ben Shattach. Remember the famous Shimon ben Shattach, whose sister became a queen. She was one of the queens that lived in Israel. Shlom Tzion, maybe. I forgot which. It was Shlom Tzion, yeah. But he was also the one that killed the 80 witches. The whole story with him and the 80 witches. There was witches hanging out in Israel. Machshefes. The witches are a real thing. He had them all hung on the same day, 80 witches. Shut it down. Shut the program down. Take your witchcraft out of the Holy Land. Anyhow, Shimon ben Shattach is the one that authored this prayer of Nishmas. Then we drink the last cup of wine. And then we say in the Chabad custom, in this Haggadah, in our Seder as well, we say the last words of the Seder are L'shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And the Rebbe writes here, and the last thing he writes in his commentary on the Haggadah, he says that the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement, the author of the Tanya, did not put into his Siddur, right? He had a prayer book, the one that we use in Shul. He did not put into the liturgy of the Siddur the words Chasal Siddur Pesach. We have ended the order of Passover. There's a song that most of the Jewish world sings. It goes like this: Chasal Siddur Pesach Kehilchaso Kechol Mitzvos. We have concluded this Passover order with all its commandments and with all its customs. Kasher. However you wanted us to do it, and we should merit to do it for years to come. It's a beautiful song. No one could ever claim that it's not a nice song. We don't sing it. Not only I don't even allow people to sing it. Normally, I'm pretty lenient. You come from your custom, you want to sit there on a Shabbos and sing your song, sing whatever you want. But at the Seder, we don't sing it. Why? So the Rebbe says, because why did the Alter Rebbe not include it in the liturgy of the Siddur? Because by Chabad ended Technit der Pesach, because in Lubavitch and Chabad, Passover never ends. It's a continuous energy. Be'emes, he says truthfully, the light, the ray of light from all the holidays shines every day. But on Passover, it has a continuous energy. So I don't want to end the Seder and say it's over, we're done. We're not done. The energy and the vibrations and the spirituality and the inspiration of the Seder must be carried with us, not just till next year, forever. So why would I stand up and say at the end of the Seder, we're shutting it down? The Passover order is now concluded. It's not concluded. It's continuing. So next time you hear your Chabad rabbi, in case you're not in Bozeman, and he's not singing Chasal Siddur Pesach, and he's ruining your childhood memories, because from your childhood, that was the most favorite song.
It would be Reform and it would be English. But I remember some of those words you were saying.
You're growing up, they had Passover. I'm just saying it wasn't offended.
Oh, yeah, we had it.
Okay, good. I'm saying they didn't want to offend the Egyptians or anything. These days, today everyone gets offended. You have to be careful when you have a Seder. If you talk negatively about the Egyptians, in America, exactly. In America, oh my gosh, did you speak negatively about the Egyptians? Yes, I did speak negatively about the Egyptians, and I'm going to speak negatively about them forever. And by the way, I'm going to speak negatively about the Romans and Babylonians and Medians and Persians and the Byzantines and the Ottomans and everyone that came from them. And yes, even the modern Iranians. Yes, I'm going to think about them at my Seder. I'm not going to drink an extra cup of wine because we don't add customs, but I am going to think about redemption, hopefully the redemption of the people of Iran. who are a modern day example of bondage. They've been held against their will, against their interest for 47 years. I don't care where you stand politically, it's not relevant to me. And it's not about Israel. It's not even about Israel. It's simply when you know that there's something like 300 million, whatever the number of people that live in Iran, it's a crazy number, who are living under tyranny for 47 years. And us fat tuchus Americans are sitting here, we have opinions. Should we? Should we not? Should we free them? Should we not? Maybe they're happier. Of course. Someone cut off your Wi-Fi for 4 minutes, you'd be calling 1-800 help a child and whatever the abuse hotline is. But the Iranians, what do you mean they love their tyrants? Who wouldn't love a tznius patrol that has guns and whips that can walk down the street if a woman is slightly dressed not to their liking, they get whipped and smacked? Oh, we Americans, free Palestine. We care about freedom. Like a lachen cup. You know what that means? Like Fayorik Ishnei. You know what that means? Fayorik Ishnei means last year's snow. That's how much it interests us. Like a hole in the head. A lachen cup means a hole in the head. Shh, we freedom. We believe in freedom. If you believe in freedom, then you have to first of all start internally. Allow the Pesach vibrations to continue throughout the year. And you don't have to do anything. One thing you certainly shouldn't do is stand with Pharaoh and say, by the way, Pharaoh was around today enslaving the Jews. At Columbia, they'd be having demonstrations for Pharaoh. Why is America going after Pharaoh? It's not our business. Why do we have to get involved in Iran? I don't know. Maybe if Roosevelt would get involved in the Holocaust slightly earlier and bomb a few train tracks, the loser, we would have 100 million Jews in the world. But no, let's wait 4 years and see if we have enough votes to support the Jews, to give people freedom. And so allow this Pesach Seder to start from within and allow you to be authentic enough to recognize that human freedom and human redemption should not be to you or to any of us a political issue. I also didn't like how everything played out in Iraq. No one likes to see 5,000 dead American soldiers. But I still remember till this very day the time when all the Iraqis went out, I remember with their purple thumbs and they went out to vote. They had a freedom to that. It didn't last. I don't know what's going on there today. It's a little bit of a shmayonki party going on there. No one knows what's cooking. But why would we sit here in our freedom and we don't pray for other people's freedom and redemption? What does that say about us? How selfish, right? How selfish could a person be with their frappuccinos, whatever they're called? What's it called? Frappuccino? Yeah. Not frappuccino? You said it right.
You just said it really wrong.
Not frappuccino or whatever. whatever that's right. We have a $19 latte. Free Palestine. What are you talking about? There's 300 million Iranians that are being hung in the streets and shot. Frappuccino. We're busy. Freedom. Pesach is about us learning to be free on the inside. All the people screaming in the streets, not one of them is free. They're a bunch of enslaved people to whatever people are telling them to say. They don't know what freedom is. They wouldn't know what it is if it hit them in the head. But they have opinions. They have opinions about Iran. This Pesach, I implore you. Listen, maybe between now and Pesach, the Iranians will be free. But if Chaz v'Shalom, if God forbid, they're still enslaved, at least during the Seder, when you talk about our freedom, the Jewish people's freedom, you think about the people who are still not free and allow for Hashem's blessings to rain upon them, that they should find freedom in their experience as well. And in that process of growth, where we seek to be free, allow yourself to tune out the noise, because there's a lot of noise. In America, they tell you, there's this guy, and I'm sure you've all heard of Dave Ramsey, how you become debt-free. Debt-free, I'm debt-free. I want to call his show one day and say, I'm not debt-free, and I'm just as happy as all those people screaming debt-free. And he tells people, he sits on his Royal Highness chair, you shouldn't have any loans. You should pay off your mortgage. You should pay off your car. You have to have $2 million every month. And everyone sits there, what are you talking about? Did you ever buy one Pesach? Did you ever make one Pesach and see the bills? And besides, these people think they're free of financial burden, which is not a bad thing. I bless everyone to be free of financial burden. But you think if you're free of financial burden, that means you're free? How many people you know that are wealthy, that are the most enslaved human beings you'll ever meet, the most unhappy, crippled people, emotionally crippled people you'll ever meet. So again, I bless every Jew and every human being to be wealthy. I have no problem with wealth, but don't confuse that with being free. Freedom starts from within. And that sounds like a Buddhist cliche, but I'm sorry to the Buddhists and to all the Jews who think it's Buddhist. It's a Jewish idea from the Exodus of Egypt. We introduced freedom to the world, and we ain't going to be shy about it. So my message to you for Pesach and my blessing to you is that you take some of these insights and allow it to carry into your holiday throughout the 8 days of Pesach, and more importantly, to allow that to carry through your mentality and viewpoint of the world. Don't get jealous of people who look like they're free where they aren't. There's a reason why Ethics of Our Father says, Mar b'nefesh and mar b'daiga, the more you have, the more worries you have. You have a 6,000 square foot mansion, you have a 6,000 more worries on your head than the person who has a 1-bedroom apartment. True story. Now, you have 3 kids, you can't have a 1-bedroom apartment, but maybe a 3-bedroom apartment still. The point is, or 4.
No, we could.
You could.
I grew up in Romania.
That's true. But that's not freedom. Freedom, sorry to break it to you, freedom is not dictated by the size of your house or the style of your car. Most Montanans, if they're fakakta Subarus hiking in the middle of the Fairy Lake, are way more free than any rich person stuck in New York in a building. So freedom is a state of mind, it's a state of heart, it's a state of soul. And once you do that, everything else will fall into place. And you'll never, a truly free individual will never stand on the side of a tyrant because you're a free person. So if you have nothing smart to say, don't say it, and let the Iranian people speak for themselves. And everyone I've spoken to in America that's from Persia, from Iran, wants that regime gone. So their people can be free, their cousins, their relatives, their friends. May be the case. We should see it in our days. Wishing you all a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, happy, sweet, kosher, incredible, uplifting Pesach. We'll see you back here, God willing, on, I want to say it's April 15th. That is the Wednesday after Pesach. Tax day. Come back for class on tax day. Oi, I filed one this week. Oi.
I'm going to be